All right, Chris Peaks back with Brandon Mosley for our BCS State of Alabama podcast, and we got Secretary of State candidate with us, Chris Horn, here with us today. Chris, man, before we get into the boring stuff of politics, let's talk some football for a minute. You know, you was a you was a Michigan Wolverine, man. I know you've always proud of that. You know, saying "Go Blue." Um, and now today with the NIL and transfer portal, nothing that means anymore. It doesn't mean anything to be a Florida Gator or Ohio State Buckeye. I mean, does this sicken you what this has done to college football?
Well, let's just say this. Thanks for having me on. I will say this. Uh, it's just whatever was done in the dark is now coming to the light. I mean, I'm a fan of all teams. My brother played at Alabama, a fan of Auburn. Of course, I played at Michigan. But, the politics of football has been catch me if you can for a very long time. And one thing about the Secretary of State's office, that office is over athletic agents, as a matter of fact. All athlete agents who are trying to represent student athletes in the state of Alabama must register with the Secretary of State. That is an issue that I've talked to Coach Tuberville about. Coach Tuberville recruited me when I was in high school and recruited my brother. And he and I have had conversations about some of the things that are going on. The Secretary of State's office has some input, believe it or not, on how these things will look going forward. I mean, sometimes you're going to have agents who are universities, right? You have a college who's trying to get my camera right, who's trying to recruit a kid, and for some reason they don't register with the state of Alabama, and by them not registering, they're in violation of the Secretary of State's order for the state of Alabama. So you're going to have an opportunity to have some conversations at a high level with colleges, coaches who are trying to poach kids from schools. You've got other entities connected to colleges who are going to have to register with the Secretary of State. If not, there's going to be some compliance issues and there's some penalties with that.
Chris, you're running for Secretary of State. I think Caroline Dobson was there a little bit ahead of you in that race.
Mm-hmm.
And she has a kind of a big fundraising lead uh, going in. How are you competing with that early, fundraising haul that she raised when she was running against Sorrell?
What's interesting is I've been around this a long time, like you guys have. I've been on the inside in terms of running campaigns. I've run them at the grassroots level in terms of working with the county. I've worked on major Senate campaigns, congressional campaigns. People don't vote for money, they vote for people. So many times the conversation becomes about money. Caroline raised a lot of money. She raised a lot of money, like 3.8 million, I think it was, when she ran for Congress just 2 years ago. What did that get her? What does it get anyone who thinks they're going to win on money? God bless her for having that kind of money. But in times like these, what I'm finding and connecting with in terms of citizens is the ability to continue a campaign that I started 4 years ago. So I'm not new to this. I'm not new to running a statewide campaign. And certainly you learn and you learn very quickly that in this specific time, specifically this time, people are extremely sensitive about the cost of living, the cost of gas, which is starting to eat up, even though it's a sacrifice to defeat Iran. You have to be careful when you're asking for money because now people are a little bit more demanding about what you're going to do with that money. So ultimately, I think to run a campaign, you have to be able to understand the new dynamics and the opportunity for us to continue to get some money. We're going to raise money. We're raising money now. It is one that, she's playing catch up. She's not run a statewide campaign so that she has to be able to go out there and she's doing her work. She's putting the work in, but it takes a lot to go to all 67 counties. And I think one of the advantages that I have is 22 in 22, we're able to go to all 67 counties. And then 2 years ago was able to, compete and win a congressional district 7. So we're not worried about the money. We're worried about the votes and getting people to the polls.
It was 4 years ago. You ran against two uh, opponents that was better funded and had more name recognition, and you had a very good showing. What did you learn from that campaign that you're applying to this one to get you over the top?
I learned from guys like you guys, Chris and Brand. I learned from you guys that everybody matters. And you can't look past people thinking that they're not important, whether they're an elected official, whether they are a janitor, whether they are a pastor, whether they're just an everyday person, everybody matters. And I learned very quickly that no matter the economic power they have in their home, no matter what they believe on Sunday or whatever day, they matter. And that was number one. Number two, Alabama is a huge state and it's broken up in 3 to 4 different significant areas. North Alabama and the Tennessee Valley is extremely different than Wiregrass and looking down at Baldwin, Mobile. And then there's the Middle District. And there's 3 different areas, and they have 3 different philosophies of who they want to vote for and how they want to vote. And I've learned that in North Alabama, it's very purple now, and people don't understand that people are moving to North Alabama to get these great jobs, to work at these great big companies. And they're coming from California, Virginia, Michigan. They're coming from everywhere. So there's a different kind of voter. So understanding the state of Alabama, being born and raised in North Alabama, having a large family in Mobile, being able to come from the west side of the state and understanding that those are my family as well. So it helps to know the state. Thirdly and lastly, it helps to understand that nasty campaigns don't work. And it was a good time running with those group of guys. Even with Ed Packer, God rest his soul, someone you can learn a lot from, and you learn what not to do and you learn what to do. And lastly, you got to love Alabama, man. You have to love the state of Alabama and love why you're doing it. If people think that you're doing it to make money, if they think that you're doing it because you have money and you have nothing else to do, if they don't think that you're real, you probably won't get their vote.
Chris, for those people that don't know, the Secretary of State is essentially the top election official as far as state government is concerned. A lot of the mechanics of the elections are, handled by the Secretary of State's office. Alabama is considered one of the most secure states in the
Yes.
country as far as our elections are concerned.
Mm-hmm.
We got voter ID. There's still a paper ballot. What, as Secretary of State, do you think you could do with the help of the legislature to make our elections even more secure so we don't have people trying to steal the elections?
First of all, very well said by you. State of Alabama is one of the most secure elections and elections processes in America. As a matter of fact, if you look at the SAVE Act, that's having a tough time going through Congress. Those are the things that we do in Alabama or seek to do better. One of those is we want to be able to, at registration, make certain that people are citizens. That's a big issue, not at the poll, but at registration. And finally, what that does is it gets you ahead of the line in terms of ensuring that this person is eligible to vote in Alabama. But again, like I said, we have so many people coming into the state of Alabama for jobs, and often they haven't changed their voting position. They may have come from Virginia and still registered to vote in Virginia. So we need to do a better job of marketing to those hot spot areas around the state where there's a high amount of people who are coming into the state who just want to go to the polls and vote. They don't understand the process. Secondly, we have hotspot areas like Franklin County. I was over in Franklin, was it Franklin County about a month ago? And I was told by the sheriff that, his jail is 85% Hispanic. His schools are 70% Hispanic. And we don't know how many of them are legal, illegal, citizens, or able to vote. So we need to dispense more resources in those areas that tend to have more issues when it comes down to registration to vote and being citizens. I think that's important. I do want you to know that I'm quite certain, I'll say the quiet part out loud, that we've got some really strong chains of elections, such as what John Merrill did a good job. He tightened things as he went. We have our current Secretary of State who has decided that he wants to use more technology, which I spoke about when I ran, is using more technology that will be able to seek, find, and destroy those who want to be bad actors in our vote process. Some of that is moving through the state house right now to tighten elections even more. I do know that, as you know, the election process had people like Ed Packard, and you had some strong, strong professionals who work the elections part of it, who are very, very committed to making us have those paper ballots. But also, they have new technology that's on the way that's going through the state house where the paper, the very paper that we vote on, is going to have some type of technology in it. Just like we have a $20 bill that's got that magnetic stripe in the dollar bill that you can kind of hold up to the light and see. Some of that technology is coming to the voting process in Alabama. So that will give us an opportunity to understand how many ballots are there and how many ballots did we take in. So there's new rules and processes along the way. And here in Huntsville, Alabama, no one does technology better than Huntsville. We put man on the moon. We're proud of it. We continue to have companies from all over the world to come and invest in this area. And for me, I'm very excited about some of the technologies that are coming out of these high-profile institutions, such as the ones that we talked about earlier, that will be able to strengthen it as we go further. There's no doubt about it. People want to cheat, but I like to take the line that John Merrill used to say. We want it to be easy to vote but hard to cheat. And whether that's through very, very basic things like in the SAVE Act that's going through DC, and some of the things that we already currently do. So I'm excited about where we are, and I'm excited that we're starting to be kind of caretakers, if you would, of the good work that the past Secretary of States have done.
Chris, it's interesting you said that about technology. Are you aware of any studies or any ways, or they're talking about incorporating AI into making our elections safer?
Well, so, it's part of my background. I worked in artificial intelligence way back. I can remember some of my first positions. It wasn't called AI. It was called machine learning at that time. It was called prediction. And that's what, when you're able to start typing and it finishes it for you. Voice recognition, those type of things are pretty much a part of the AI toolkit. What I am seeing with AI is something that probably is years off. AI is it's more than a tool. It's starting to be sentient a little bit, where it's somewhat smarter than humans in some areas. And we want to keep AI out of the vote process if we can and make it as basic as we possibly can. But you do have the scalability with AI when it comes down to counting votes or recounts, things that are very, very basic that don't interfere with the vote itself. So I think there's some stuff out there. Some states are experimenting with the counting of the votes to look for anomalies, to see whether or not they're seeing patterns. You saw some things in Georgia where the FBI went in and they're looking at some of the ballots, and it looks like a machine just kind of printed out those ballots with already voted in, and they'll be able to pick up on that. So there's some things coming down the pipe with AI, but I'm very careful with that type of technology involved in the process. And you certainly don't want to do anything with AI unless it's peer reviewed, well tested, and well adopted by people who are very, very smart and do these things every day. And for me, what I'm probably going to do is always keep a board of technologists here in the Huntsville area who are very well known, owners of companies who do extremely well, and just keep our eyes out on things for sure.
Election fraud, is something that some people say doesn't happen, but we just had 3 people arrested for, believe it or not, for trying to steal the Frisco City municipal election in favor of a mayoral candidate they
I
like.
saw that. And I saw that one of them was a security guard and the other worked in elections for the courthouse. I think, and I'm pretty confident when I say this, whoever becomes Secretary of State is starting to really have to be extremely diligent about the fact that all 67 counties operate their elections. It's not the Secretary of State who's operating all the elections. It's those folks at the local level, you know, whether they're the probate judge or the person who's counting people coming in the door. You're starting to see these
Stop.
type of anomalies to pop up where you're going to have a little bit more of a sheriff, if I could use that word. You got the Secretary of State, you may have to have a sheriff of the Secretary of State whose sole position and sole job is to work with those counties, probate judges, and those local sheriffs, and with the Attorney General's office to prosecute those people who try to steal elections. And they steal elections one vote at a time. And you're right, that was three people in small city. Can you imagine the sample size? If you're able to do that at a small city like Frisco City, then that means that you have to be even more vigilant in counties like Madison, Jefferson, Baldwin, and Montgomery County, where things may slip by easier, if you will. But I was very saddened to hear that. And ultimately, it shows you that you're absolutely correct, Brand, that people are still in the business of stealing. Like I said, we want to make it easy to vote, really hard to cheat. And if they do, we want to prosecute wherever we can.
Chris, a while ago you was talking about the Save Act, and I think I seen polls like, 90% of whites believe in voter ID, like 80% of blacks and 70 something percent of Hispanics. And then you have Chuck Schumer saying this is Jim Crow 2.0. What do you think when you hear something like that?
I think about my very own family. I think my mom, who is a church lady at her age and stage, she's retired teacher, retired educator, but my mom couldn't vote once upon a time. She was a little girl from Birmingham who had six sisters who were all older. And my grandfather was a coal miner there in Birmingham under the ground. And, she told me stories about, she wanting to vote and how important that was. And showing ID, and I talked to her about it, that wasn't a conversation because of the joy of just to vote. Black folks had the opportunity to vote for a couple of years right after slavery. And until Jim Crow and sometimes Jane Crow, who served as Secretary of State, most of them were white women who were Secretary of States between the 20s and the late 60s. Black folks weren't able to vote. My relatives who served in the military come home from Vietnam or Korea or World War II or whatever they served could not vote. And they were glad to pull out an ID to go out and say, hey, I can vote. I mean, that is an insult for Black folks to say, hey, having an ID is something that's so hard when you have people who died for this country for the right to choose an elected official and not a king. So you go all the way back to those times and you come all the way forward and you say, well, who are they actually trying to represent? Because those people who marched on Edmund Pettus Bridge, do you think that they would get trampled, beaten? Because if they said all you need is an ID, they would be standing at the front of the line, you know? So I think about my own family. I'm a descendant of slave descent and non-slave descent. I'm a descendant of the House of Pettus, of Edmund Pettus, and through his wife, Miss Chapman, who married Pettus. So for me, it's very, very sensitive. When you have that type of ancestry, it goes directly to that bridge by that name, and the horrors that came after that until we were able to vote. And to be able to say that having an identification card is so hard to get that we don't want to pass this law. It's an insult and it hurts extremely, extremely bad, especially those military veterans who gave their life for this country and came home and could not vote. So it's an insult.
You mentioned the military veterans. Um, we've had issues in the past with getting our absentee ballots to our
Correct.
military, like Christopher, who was in Afghanistan, during the Afghan war, and, to our guys in Iraq, and then
True.
getting those ballots back on time so they're actually arrive in time that they get counted. Um, What, as Secretary of State, can you do to help facilitate those military votings without allowing, the bad actors like we had down in Frisco, or what's alleged to have happened
That's
in
right. Let's say
Frisco,
alleged,
in
right? To that, so they
taking
vote.
advantage of the absentee ballot process?
I think you answered your question by asking the question, right? Most of life is asking the right question. Who should be at the front of the line? Those defending our right to vote. And I think we should dedicate every resource that we have, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's on a ship that is protecting the Hormuz right now, the Strait of Hormuz, or someone who's in the Coast Guard who's securing the coast from bad actors coming out of Cuba or Venezuela. We need to do everything that we can ahead of time to get a ballot in their hand so that they can vote. I do know that the absentee ballot process, and this is under Secretary Merrill, that they did have some problems. Like you said, there were some documented problems. So I think working with the Pentagon, with the Department of War, to be able to understand what it means to serve and why they're serving, it means that they get their vote and they get the vote first. There have been some states I know around the country that's trying to do electronic voting with the military so they can just simply go online and vote and be able to use that as a way, as a platform to get their vote in and vote in on time. If you're going to reach out to the military, you've got to get those votes to them. If we're doing paper consistently, you got to get them to them as early as possible and try to keep the chain as tight as possible with sealed ballots and that sort of thing. But I'm on board for everything and anything that we can to make certain that our men and women who serve our great country are able to stand in the front of the line no matter where they are in the world. I'm someone who grew up, as a side note, I spent 4.5 years in Germany, in the late 70s, early 80s. And my parents went through that process. And I remember that they were having a difficult time. And I remember some of the soldiers coming over to the house talking about how they want to vote and how it was a difficult time. So again, it's critically important. And we just have to make that problem disappear, period.
Along those same lines, and I'm not talking about the military here. I know, remember back in 2020, they were counting 7, 8 days after the election. I know in 2024 in California, they were still counting in January. Shouldn't these things be postmarked or be in by the day of the election if you have an absentee ballot to be counted?
Yeah. So my thing is simply this. I mean, when the polls close at 7 o'clock on vote day, I want every vote to be in to be counted. I think that's the issue. The issue is often if you're taking absentee ballots, that's what makes it difficult if you don't have a hard and fast deadline to get those ballots in. I'm a stand online guy wherever possible, unless like the Save Act, unless there's extreme health issues, you're in a hospital in a bed or something like that, not to have absentee ballots. I mean, it just makes it easier. As Secretary of the State of Alabama, I do, Chris, I share your concern. And I believe that whomever, and I hope it's me, whoever is the Secretary of Alabama needs to be a little bit more proactive, looking over the shoulder of some of these key states. In these federal elections, for instance, it impacts the U.S. Congress and the House and the Senate when the state of Georgia is cheating, or they're having some issues getting their ballots in, or it's Philadelphia. And I personally went to Detroit in 22 and saw the madness that was going on there, and they were still counting days on days later. So for me, I believe that the secretary must go to those hotspot areas or have a group of volunteers to be able to overlook and oversee what's going on. I don't think we can control, that's their state, they run their elections. But my goodness, I believe that the Secretary of State of Alabama is deeply impacted. The people of Alabama are deeply impacted when they're cheating in other states or they're still counting 2 weeks later. That's why I think the SAVE Act didn't go far enough. I think the SAVE Act is a good start in terms of getting people to the polls and getting them identified. But I think it's also critical to start having, especially the federal elections, some guidelines and guide rails when it comes down to when the election is over. And that's my view.
We've had a lot of controversy on this in the legislature. What's your view on should we have some sort of post-election audit where we double check and make sure all our processes were working correctly in the election?
Absolutely. I think in any contest, it's like football, right? Alabama plays Auburn. It's a great, hard fought game. They're going on to the bowl game, but before they move on, they have to audit what they did during that game. I mean, they want to do what they did good, what they did poorly, and what they could do better. And certainly, though, I think it's critically important in some of the test places that they're trying to install that here in Alabama. I think it should be. I think we should go back and audit every election where we could. I think we need to have an audit army, is what I said in 22, and I say it now. And their job and a group of volunteers in the process is to be able to go back and count every ballot and do it by hand. That's just my vision and my goal. I think we've got enough teachers. I think we have enough armed services veterans. I think we have enough people who work in government who would volunteer or help volunteer to count these ballots in every single county. And I think that's critically important because it keeps us in check. It keeps the Secretary of State's office in check. Frisco City, as you talked about, good example. I think there was a tip off there. Someone saw some anomalies. And I think that's a good way to see whether or not the Secretary of State is doing a good job and whether or not all 67 counties and their probate judges can do a better job. And I think that's the
Well, I
only way
mean,
that you can do that.
in Frisco City, the anomaly was there was an inordinate number of absentee
That is
ballots
correct.
and almost an impossibly high percentage of those went for the challenger versus the incumbent.
I mean, they could have evened it out a little bit, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
it was
it's
the
like
fact they cheated. It's the fact
90%
that
of
they
the
made it
absentee ballots
one-sided, you know?
voted
I
for.
mean, and you don't get that, unless you do some peer-reviewed audits. I mean, again, because Frisco City was so small, it was an outlier that everyone can see. But it's in your big counties, Madison County, Baldwin, Mobile, Montgomery, Jefferson, where it'd be a little bit harder to detect those things. And I think that's why an audit is fair and near. And I do think a combination of human audits and some AI audits and comparing those three with what happened at the polls, you should get some good numbers. Hey, listen, it takes a lot. I don't know if you guys seen Elon Musk and his rocket ship, right? That rocketry and the design of that rocketry has to have audits almost every 60 minutes or every minute to make certain that before they go forward, they check and see what happened. They've got a rocket that can go up and come back and land and not land in the ocean on a dime. How do they do that? They do that by peer review audits of not just their software, but their functions and how they do things. And I think if that type of perfection is commanded and demanded in the space industry, then we should be able to have that same type of precision, that Huntsville Rocket City precision for our audit processes. And you're going to have some mistakes. You're going to have people who make mistakes, Brian. I mean, that's going to happen. But what we're looking for are people who are stealing votes and people who have systems in place. That what happened in Frisco City was a system, right? It was a system that they tried to do. And that's what typically is happening is that people aren't trying to get one vote. They're trying to get 1,000 votes, and it may take 20 people to do it. But that's how you really want to, again, you want to have people who are smart enough. You want to have technology that's smart enough to pick up those anomalies in real time and not when it's too late, because those votes are certified very quickly. So if you're going to change an election and you're going to certify those vote totals, you better have some systems in place, automation or handheld, if we're going to do auditing. Because being a Monday morning quarterback and the game is over, you can't play it again, doesn't do anybody any good. I'm sure you agree with that.
remember back in 2024, there were some polling numbers, and I texted you about it was showing that President Trump was getting as high as 17% of the black male vote, and said he may get 20. And I said, "What'd you think?" You said, "Well, he's going to get a quarter." And man, you nailed it. 'Cause he ended up getting 24%. And I know that you've been.
Go ahead.
And I know that you've been working hard, recruiting black voters. Do you foresee that number to continue to rise in the upcoming elections?
Let me just say this. I work with ALGOP in terms of new recruiting. I work with the county level. I've worked very diligent over the past 10, 12 years. And certainly what I've been working clearly on are not just black voters, but military voters, veterans who come home. I've been working on them being interested in voting. We have a lot of males, black or white, who don't vote. We have a sect of Christians who go to church every Sunday or once a month that don't vote, that don't have a color to them. And there's this lost in trust and the confidence of voting that I've tried to help restore that. And to me, that gives me an opportunity to be able to peg numbers. I'm very, very, I think, accurate at predicting elections. I can predict whether I'm going to win, lose, how close it is. And Chris, you and I talk on that very, very often. I pegged it at 25% because voters are sensitive to their wallets, especially men who are either helping their family, helping out mom, helping out their sisters, helping out their own family. And there's a sense of pride when a man can take care of himself and take care of his family. And if he feels that he cannot do that, then he's not going to trust his vote in people who are not going to create economic wealth. Men, black men, tend to be a lot more entrepreneurial, and white men are entrepreneurial as well. What you're doing today is entrepreneurial. And doing that, you're more sensitive to how you want to spend your money and how you want to get money. If someone puts a contract, if I say, hey, Brand, I need you to represent me in this area, I want to be able to give you guys money. I just want to see the plan. And we don't even have to like each other. We don't have to be the same color, but we can transact and do business and find a way to have common ground. And that's the way it happens when it comes down to the black male vote, is it's transactional. And they see Donald Trump as a transactional leader. They're able to push away all the things. He's a racist. They saw the relationship with Jesse Jackson 30 years ago. He just passed away. And the film comes out of how great Jesse Jackson and Donald Trump were friends. And they were friends because they came together on economics. And I think that's what's going on now. So you're seeing this uptick in males, black and white, who are joining the military, who are putting their hand in the air and say they want to serve this country because they trust Donald Trump. And I think that's going to continue to grow. I really do. Now, does that mean that the next Republican leader is going to get that same respect? I can't say that. I don't know whether or not Rubio or Vance or whomever comes along. What I do know is the macho male who wants to take care of his family, who believes in serving his country, who loves sports, they love Donald Trump's transactional, let's do business mode. And I think if the Republicans continue on that path, they're going to be able to pick up Hispanic voters. I mean, Hispanic men voters are trending the same way. They really are. They are very much family driven, whether they're married or not. They may take care of their family or take care of mom, dad, whomever with themselves. And they like that really tough guy mentality that Trump's a boxer. He's a sports fan. I mean, he's that guy that men trust, whether they're black, white, or brown. And I think it's going to be interesting though when he leaves. It'd be very, very interesting to see what that electorate goes, because the Democrat Party, and the reason why I peg it so tightly is that you'll have two people in the household. You have a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever the combination may be, and the wife or girlfriend will vote Democrat, and the men will vote Republican. The wife or girlfriend or whatever it may be will go to church on Sundays, and the men will watch church service on TV and wait on a football game to come. So you're starting to see splits to come into households that pretty much did not used to be. I mean, I see it in the party. I see more, and it's probably because of Katie. I mean, I worked with Katie on her campaign, good friends, and Katie's husband and my brother were teammates at Alabama. They were very good friends. And I think she has had a great influence on conservative women and young conservative women coming to the party. And I think that, and I believe and I see it, that that's going to carry forward. So you have some new groups coming in, young women. Then what I see is the Charlie Kirk crowd. And the Charlie Kirk crowd is a new kind of voter. It's not a black voter, not a Hispanic voter, but it's a young Republican or young conservative voter, if you will, who's college to mid 30s, who really followed Charlie Kirk and chapters at colleges like UAH and Alabama and Auburn. They're replacing young Republican clubs, these Charlie Kirk turning point organizations. And sometimes they're libertarian. Sometimes they're not even Republican. I mean, the day of hard R Republican is going away. And I think that you're going to see a new type of conservative voter come along.
How much is the Democrat Party's overemphasis on the LGBTQ plus minus thing
Yep.
hurt them, especially with young people
Yeah.
and with minorities? Because I mean, we're a little bit older than the current
That's
generation.
right. That's right.
We don't really remember a boy in a dress going in the girls' bathroom back when we was
Right.
in school. I mean, there probably would have been punches thrown. Um, but I mean, all of a sudden, at the second half of the Obama administration, and then Joe Biden, they just embraced, we're going to have trans women, whatever that's supposed to be, in girls' sports, and that Leah Thompson, winning, women's swimming events in college and sort of thing. How much did that damage the Democrat Party with a lot of constituencies?
Incredibly so. I believe that a healthy republic has two parties. I like the yin and yang of a Republican Party, a Democrat Party, or conservative, or liberal, or then there's this third thing called progressive, right? So the progressive wing of the party, of the Democrat Party, has overtaken the Democrat Big D. Most of the people, and you know this, both of you guys know this, most people don't. The Democrat Party owned the state of Alabama until the Tea Party came around 2010, 2012. All of these guys and girls who are in the state house right now over a certain age were all Democrats. And what's happened is the minority party was the Republican Party in Alabama, right? What's starting to happen with the culture wars was that you're able to see it and you're able to see it out loud. When you talk about Leah Thompson and the swimming, and I worked very hard when the young lady who lost Leah, she came to Huntsville. We did major events together. It had no anomaly against the lifestyle that people choose. I don't choose to be LGBTQ plus. That's my personal choice. As a conservative who has a libertarian bent, you do you, I do me. But what happens is when there are physical differences like sports, and when there are cultural differences like those same men going into not just competing against women, but using the same restroom. And when I heard the young lady from Kentucky swimming tell me that he would undress in the women's locker room, that was more than just competing in the swimming event, right? Now you're looking at a grown man with all his genitalia in front of all these women, and they not understanding, wait, you're trying to beat me in a swimming pool, you're beating me here. Well, why can't you just go to the men's bathroom to change your clothes? That's the type of perversion that those young college age women saw. Back in the day when we were doing it, if we would have taken off our swimming trunks in front of women in their locker room,
yeah, that's called a flasher, and they put us in jail for that kind of stuff.
100%. You took the words right out of my mouth. You're called a flasher and you're going to jail. And you're going to be shamed in your community. There's no shame anymore. The old grandmas and grandpas and uncles, through divorce and a lot of different things, there's no shame when little Bobby comes and he decides he wants to grow his hair long, he wants to wear a dress. Oh, I still love little Bobby. We can't shame little Bobby. We can't spank him or anything like that. And so children is the socialist manifesto is to change culture through children. That's what they believe. And so the progressive movement has taken over the Democrat Party, where Bill Clinton and those other Democrats probably would have been Republicans, given the standard that's now their Democrat. It's very sad to see because Alabama used to, like I said, was a Democrat state until 2010. So the Democrat Party, not to give them any advice, but just looking at it as a political expert, the Democrat Party is no more. And now it's becoming those Democrats who are socially conservative who go, this is good versus evil now. This is good versus evil. If you're an evil Republican, you don't get a vote. And that's the part that I think the Republican Party, who's trying to create new law for party registration, which everyone is jumping on that thing, and there's a big infighting in the Republican Party in Alabama right now regarding party registration, because you have gay Republicans now, you have LGBTQ clubs now, and what you're starting to see is people are choosing the person over the party. And even Doug Jones has come out, he's got a big office here in Huntsville, where he's trying to decouple straight party ticket voting. He wants that gone because, of course, he wants to win over those people, those Republicans who don't like Tuberville. And you're starting to see some of that where people are choosing the person over the party, especially in North Alabama. And we track those numbers very, very closely.
Let's talk about this. While ago, you started talking about Jim Crow. You know what blacks have went through for hundreds of years to get equal rights. Or how does it make you feel when you see the trans latch onto this and talk about their movement in civil rights or equal rights? How does that make you feel?
Well, I mean, personally, I'm a human being just like you guys are, man. I mean, only 0.1% of our DNA makes our skin different. I think I got a better tan than you guys, but that's the only thing that makes us different. Other than that, it's our character, it's our culture, it's the food we like to eat, it's the places we like to go. And people have preferences. Some people hate black people, and I know a lot of black people who hate white people. So it becomes who you are as an individual, as a character. That's just the way that's my lived reality. I think it's shameful, though, that people have decided that color is going to be the thing that continues to separate us, right? If we can get past the color structure, I think we've done a great thing. And I think that's the answer, is the way to stop being a racist is you stop being racist, and that's black or white. But let me ask you, what is the heart of your answer to that question? What do you think?
Well, when I look at it, I think it's just it just sickens me because we can go back through the lynchings, 16th Street Baptist Church bombing, the murder just for trying to write, and then these people are out here, demanding to go into, like I said, women's bathroom and stuff. It just sickens me to see it because blacks had to put up such a fight, for them just to be able to do this right here.
Well, I think that's beautifully said, because blood was shed just to vote. I mean, just to come to this country, blood was shed here. The reality is, this is a huge, and the cool thing about being Secretary of State It's one of the things I want to do is these conversations right here. I think we have a short time in history to have open conversations like we're having right here. Because ultimately, you look at what happened in Minneapolis. Give you a good example. My son is head assistant basketball coach for the University of Minnesota basketball team.
Oh,
He's
wow.
only
Right.
been there a couple of years. So I actually went up to Minneapolis this winter, and I was around during that area when Nick Shirley was looking at the Somalis, right? Somalians are also a group of people who are not white, by the way, but they think they're white. They look down on descendants of slavery. I'm a descendant. My family comes from the Clotilda community, on my dad's side, but Somalians think badly of Black people who are descendants and essentially have attached themselves to the constructs of the white community of Minneapolis. So all of a sudden, all the LGBTQ, they rush to protect the Somalians, if you notice, and Black people are sitting on the porch going, that's not our fight. Whether you're a Republican or Democrat, those Somalians hate American Blacks, descendants of slavery. So in our community of being Americans, there's always these slices, but nobody has died on that hill but African Americans. When you've been lynched, when you've had to count jelly beans in the jar, when you've served this country and come back from Vietnam, Korea, or whatever, and you still can't vote, and you want to attach LGBTQ to Edmund Pettus Bridge, it's an insult. And I'm
Yeah,
proud to say there are people who are Black and who are white, like yourselves, or they can see right through the garbage and say, hey, you know what? That should be an insult. It's an insult to me. And that's part of the being wanting to be Secretary of State, man, is that I want to help save our souls as SOS. I want us to have these tough conversations. And I want Alabama to look in the mirror and say, hey, listen, man, let's move forward. And that's Black folks too and white folks too. Just understand that we're Americans first. First. And at some point, we see what's happening in New York. It's Christians versus Islam. I mean, it's starting to be more than just about race, but that identity, Black folks are getting a little bit angry that you're trying to steal that blood that was spilled for those rights. And that's
yeah,
just what it is.
because in the Jim Crow days, people were discriminated against because of their skin color. I
That's
mean,
correct. That's correct.
there are LGBTQ plus people that are in all kinds of weird, whatever they're into in all the races. But at the end of the day, hey, I mean, a gay white dude in overalls looks like a straight white dude in overalls. And nobody's beating him up on the street because they don't know what, as long as he keeps his stuff to himself,
Mm-hmm.
um, he's not discriminated against,
And that's
because he
why
can go
Alabama,
undercover, and, I mean, the gay black dude is still a black dude, it's just, I mean, there, the secrecy element of it. I mean, they had to hide out, but they could blend back into either society. When it was a black white thing, yeah, the whites are whites and the blacks are blacks,
right, right.
and there's no running away from it. So it's not the same experience.
And
But
there's something
getting back to
happened. I don't mean to cut you off because you made a very, very good point. Is that identity was seen with the eye.
yeah,
It was clear. Uh, and something happened over the last 15, 20 years, though, even in the state of Alabama, to your point. You're starting to see the growth of a population that one drop of blood made you Black, right?
yeah,
And what's starting to happen is you're starting to see a lot of mixing in terms of black men, white women, and white men, black women having children. And
Yeah.
you can see that in your neighborhood, your community, your church, ball games. There are a lot of mixed race people, and there's a growing percentage of mixed race people. And what that does is maybe not matter at the ballot box, but white grandpa still is going to love his mixed grandson.
Right.
And I say that because it's a very deep protectionist comment that I don't come from generations of wealth because we had cows and we had pastures. I didn't make my money from slavery. My family didn't make money from slavery. Most black folks didn't make money from slavery. People say, oh, that was a long time ago. But when you inherit that wealth through the generations and it's passed on, you get willed money, it's still there. That's a financial element, whether you're black or white, that people aren't racist about, but their economics, you're poor and I'm not, that's there too, but nothing more stark and powerful than if white grandpa, he could be a member of the Ku Klux Klan, or he could just be a straight up racist. But if his granddaughter has a baby with a black man, it changes hearts and minds.
But
And it
now,
changes family trees. And
not,
now when grandpa goes to the barbershop with his white friends and he hears them make those N-word jokes, he's going to say, hey, you can't say that in front of me because you're talking about my grandson.
well, I mean
And
that
that's
that
the
that
biggest
may be
change I see.
true in this generation, but now if you looked at the old slave censuses, and
Correct.
there were slave censuses,
That's
there
correct.
was a race question on the slave census, and I looked at those because mother was big into genealogy, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, B is for black. I understand. What the hell does M stand for?
Mulatto.
And that was
Mulatto.
for mulatto
That's
because
right.
we
Yeah.
use that term. You know, though most of those mulatto mixed race children had white fathers. And in that era, hey, their kids became their property and their slaves. And they just, I guess, I don't know how you dealt with it. I mean, my
I have to deal
mind
with that. I
can't
have to deal with
wrap.
that now. And
Yep.
no matter the darkness of my skin, my great great grandfather was a mulatto. My great great grandmother was a mulatto on my mother's side. My great great grandfather was fathered probably by Samuel Chapman, and and the Chapman family, as you know, is legendary. One became governor and one was a judge, and his daughter became the wife of Edmund Pettus. My great great grandfather, who was a mulatto, was raised not on that plantation field, but in that household. And his knowing that his father was a white man. And this is the type of conversation. I thank you, Brand, for bringing this up. To be Secretary of State and be over elections, to be over land, but property and something shared in those files. The deep files of the state of Alabama. Auditor dealt with property. Secretary of State dealt with property of slave owners. The reality, though, the good news, me being a Christian, is I believe there were one people serving one God, but we need to stop telling that one lie that the three of us could be genetically related easily. I'm a big
Oh, yeah.
genealogy fan. I feel like as Secretary of State, I'm going to raise money from outside where everyone in the state of Alabama can get an ancestry.com account. I want us to have the biggest family picnics that we can have with black and white, with my white family and with my black family. I know my black family, but in the black family, we didn't talk about that. But that's why you see light skinned black people. And you see these because their fathers or grandfathers are white. Now, if it was the other way around, there's also evidence that some women, white women, had black children. Most of them were put into the slave population or they were killed. And that's part of the high birth mortality rate or high death rate of children is the death of mixed race children. But mulatto, if you look in the slave schedules in the state of Alabama, there's a very high percentage of mulattoes, especially county by county. And people are turning their head. And I believe deeply, if we look at our ancestors and the commonality, a lot of them were Irish. I've got Irish blood. I can look and see who my great great grandfather was. I'm not ashamed of that. To have white men who were slave owners, whether it was by force or by love, they had children with slave women because they wanted to have more slaves. And you have to remember that slavery was brought to an end in the early 1800s. And so you had to reproduce. If you wanted more slaves, you had to make more slaves. Um, so for me,
You mean the slave trade?
well, no, they had slave farms where they had the big buck where they had one black slave male to impregnate as many females, and you had slave owners to also impregnate black slave women to create more slave property. You have to understand, like you two men just said, we were property taxed by the state of Alabama, property. And so now for me, it's critical before I leave this earth that people will have the tools. If they don't want to share it, they don't have to. But to know your family and to have no shame that you have a white ascendant, I think it brings us closer together. And I think we're at a time now where people are ready for that. I really do.
Getting
Well
back to the
said.
Secretary of State's race still, one issue that's come up is, every state maintains a voter file. And so if I want to, well, if I'm running for like Secretary of State statewide, I want to get a hold of that. I want to know I want to be able to identify the Republican primary voters because that's obviously where the voters of the Republican primary are, as people who voted Republican primaries in the past.
Mhm.
Um, that can cost up to $30,000
Yeah.
at even though it's a data file that you or I could actually email. It's it's not like the days when we're talking about a thick book here. I know there's legislation before, be considered. Should that fee come down to something a little more affordable for candidates?
Well, that's an incredible question because you asked a question on affordability. There are companies, and look, I don't have anything to hide, man. I've been at this too long. I've been on as a candidate and I've worked campaigns. The reality is that credit card companies, everyone is doing data gathering on everything that we do.
Yeah.
We go to the store, it knows what you bought, it knows how much money you spent. If you're riding down the street, there are cameras on the poles that know that you were in your car and you drove at that location and you did it this amount of times this week. All of that data is put into a brand data file, right? Which includes how you vote. And they know whether or not you attend church. There's 100 different data points that I can go down. And I can learn more about, I don't need to know your name, but I can know your voter file, right? And I think that should be free. I think that should be free. I think that detaching the name and having the data should be free. Because what's happening, if it's public information already, it's paid for at some point by taxpayers. It's their data. You shouldn't have to FOIA to get that. Now, whether or not you want to put a name on it and be able to have that type of attachment, I don't know, man. I just don't like the fact of data brokers who own all this data. And ultimately, over years, you can collect data. If I've been doing this for 10, 15 years, can you imagine the database I have? I mean, I'm not telling on myself, but I know where every voter is. I know how they vote. I know what they vote. I don't need to go and look. And Chris, and that's why with Chris said you pegged it. I pegged it because I've got an immense amount of data. So I don't care what campaign you're running against me. Always know that I've got a 10-year data file. And that's collected over the years, and I can see the change and see how people vote. But to your question, I think that any data point, I think you should be able to strip away the name. That should be free. I'll be honest with you. I hate the fact that my personal data is owned by data brokers. I hate that. I don't think that's their information. You should know how many times I go to the store and all those things. But we're the product. We are the product. They're selling us. That's the reason why they want you to get everything for free. Get all these apps that you download, all these apps. It collects information and it ends up in your voting file. So I'm a little bit, I'm on the privacy side, but living in a city as high tech as Huntsville, where the largest FBI entity outside of DC lives, we don't have any privacy. We just don't. And you have to work really, really hard to keep things private. And I think that you should not have to pay for information. I don't think that our personal information should be attached to files. And as Secretary of State, I don't know what my power would be, maybe to influence policy, but this is the reason why some people get 100 scam calls on their phone and some people don't get any, because they have information all the way down to who you voted for and they target you. And I think that's very wrong. And I hope that we work harder, that corporations who are incorporated, and that's part of the Secretary of State's job, is these corporations, business side of it, and to put in some clauses that they will not collect information on their customers without their permission.
Chris, I think it takes like 45,000 signatures for an independent or another party to get on the ballot. Do you think those numbers should be lowered to make it easier for people to get on the ballot?
Well, I could tell you, you guys don't know this, but the independents in Madison County sway our elections about 5 to 7%. I mean, I'm going to repeat what I just said. That means that they have collected enough signatures and received enough votes in elections where an independent can be on the ballot in Madison County. I think that having access to the ballot should not be harder. I probably going to get, I don't care. I believe deeply that being an American, where men and women have bled, died, buried for our freedom, and primarily this country is founded for the right to vote because we didn't want a king. Now, are we becoming the very thing that the reason why we left England? If a person's able to gather enough votes to win an election, they should be able to do so. If we're going to go to party registration, then I think the 45,000 signature thing should go away. If we go to party registration, which it looks like the Republican Party is going to do, that's our political business. If an independent wants to have their political business, let that be their business. If I believe in our party, I believe in me, that people are going to vote for me, then you got an R, you have a D. But here in Huntsville, in Madison County, we're already dealing with that issue. That's how Maryland Lands that's how Maryland Lands came along. So ultimately, I'm willing to entertain those type of going to all 67 counties and ask the same questions that you just asked. Because other states have multiple parties. All Republicans aren't the same. If the state of Alabama was Democrat, a one-party state, from Reconstruction in the 1870s to 2012, it's only 2025. 110 years, we had one party. Now we have people saying, oh, we shouldn't have three. So it's hard when the proof is in the pudding that you could vote Democrat and people did. You could vote Republican and you lost for 110 years. But if you want to vote independent or that 45,000 signature, I'm telling you, 5 to 7% sways elections. It sways elections. And I think that I don't operate from a place of fear. I operate from a place of power and strength. And so I'm not scared of a third party. And I think, there needs to be conversations about that. I'm not saying where I believe or not. I'm saying that we need to open up ourselves to the conversation of that 45,000 signature rule. Why 45,000, by the way? Why 45,000?
What happened was, if you remember the 2002 election, it was Don Siegelman was the governor.
That's right.
And Bob Riley was the challenger.
Oh, he froze on us.
Yeah, and I think Sophocles was within like the margin of error or whatever the difference was.
John Sophocles, who ran as the Libertarian, had so many votes that his was actually more than the gap between Siegelman and Bob Riley. So they had a special session immediately after that election. It had another purpose, but as a secondary deal, the Republicans and the Democrats got together and said, no more. That's when they raised the standard so high that you couldn't get libertarians and Reform Party. I mean, I remember when I first voted, I mean, it shocked me because I knew about George Bush and I knew about, George H. Bush, and I knew about the caucus, but then all of a sudden I got this ballot and Lyndon LaRouche is on the ballot. The
Yeah.
KKK party was still on the ballot.
You remember that KKK was a whole party, weren't they?
Really?
Wow.
And
you go way back. Remember the KKK was actually
there
on
was
the
like
ballot.
the Socialist Workers Party was on there, and I'm like, who are these people?
But what's crazy about that is they all had their own choice. I mean, where did the KKK party end up? Who they end up voting for? They had always been the Democrat Party.
Yeah, I mean, I know that they actually formed, and when they got sideways with the Democrats, there was a KKK party. Remember when Charlie Graddick
that's right,
got that nomination, Democrat nomination for governor, stolen from him? The KKK party came to him and said, Charlie, we will put you on the ballot as our candidate. Charlie said, yeah, bro, no, not happening.
Charlie was like, I'm not sure I want to do
that. God, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, Charlie was like, I'm not really sure I want to go down. It goes to the fact, and you said it before, and I reiterate it. People have privilege. They have their own. It's like you said about the LGBTQ thing. I can't tell them what to do. They can't tell me what to do. KKK party or those other 5 or 7 other parties, you're able to. That's what I think makes America healthy. Instead of like jungle primaries like they have over in Georgia, where Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, where the top 2, whether a Democrat Party or individual, that's what they do over there. Instead of having, a 2-party system, it is a 2-party system, but you can actually win the jungle primary and then hope to come in second. And you can flip the whole thing.
That's how David Duke got in that runoff in Louisiana back in '91.
I think I'm at a point where I'm still on that freedom train because I think of my ancestry where you could vote for a few years after slavery, then you couldn't vote till almost 100 years later. So what? You have a minor party, you're going to have your following, and what are you scared of as a Republican Party? We're the big dogs now. But the pendulum may swing one day, right? But 2 parties colluding to keep out other, because those people stay home.
I mean,
they stay home. That's the outcome. They stay home. And as Secretary of State, my number one job is protect the election. But if nobody votes, what am I protecting?
Yeah.
My job is to
Yeah.
be the cheerleader for every person to go to the polls and have their vote counted and protected. But if no one wants, if you say, I'm not going to vote for Bram or vote for Chris, I don't like either of those two. So guess what I'm doing on vote day? I'm going to Starbucks and get me some coffee and I ain't vote. And that's what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, people have different reasons why, the Secretary of State's office. Right now, it's because we do have, and I'm talking freely because, you know, having a talk show myself, I'm good at this, I think. You have a lot of people who don't like Donald Trump in Madison County. It's Madison County is so weird. It's the largest county, but you have people who don't like Trump, and you have people who don't like Katie Britt because of Mo Brooks. And if, in fact, and then you have people who love Donald Trump. You have people who are Democrats, but they vote Republican because of where they came from. I'm simply saying, I just want people to vote. That's what America's all about. And my role is to be that cheerleader for that process that for hundreds of years my people weren't even able to be a part of. And now we're having the conversation about, oh, well, we got to exclude all these people because you either love us or you stay home. Isn't that voter suppression?
Yeah.
Isn't that voter suppression? To be able to simply say, you have two options, but we're only you got 100 options, but we're only going to give you two. And if you don't like them, stay home.
Yeah, because like the libertarians, they got ballot access last time,
Yeah.
but they had to go out and raise $250,000 to go pay ballot harvesters to go and sign up people to get the number that it takes them to get on the
Hey man,
ballot.
they got to work for. Hey,
And
hey,
they
I
were
didn't say you had to
broke when
work.
they
You got to
got
work for it. They had to work for it.
no.
But they
Yeah.
did some damage in Madison County, man. I mean, Madison County's a large county, but the libertarians did their work. They worked for it, man. I like the fact. I like the fact that they work for it. I'm not a libertarian, but who are the libertarians? Most of them were Republicans. I'm talking the last 7
Right.
to 10 years. Most of the libertarians, we had so many. Now I want to say it like that. We had several libertarians who left the Republican Party and tried to come back to win county elections. And as the county executive committee, we voted not to let them back into the Republican Party to run for elections.
Yeah, in fact, at the executive committee level, we passed well, I was off the executive committee then. I'm just covering it. They passed a rule that if you donate to anyone other than a Republican,
That's correct. Still there. That
then
rule's
you
still
can be
there.
removed from you cannot run in as a Republican. I mean, one candidate, Miss Ross from up in North Alabama, I think,
I remember that. I remember that.
yeah, ran, we were qualified as a Republican. Like, hey, we looked in the voter rolls and you got a Democrat primary ballot at some point here. Yeah, you're not on our ballot.
But
Well,
that's
Yeah, that
Doc
was
exactly
crazy.
Mancuso,
why when it
Doc,
comes down to fundraising, I'm gonna be honest with you. AEA, you guys know that three-letter
yeah,
organization that some people call a three-letter organization. It's not, it's AEA. We had a rule that if you took money from the AEA, you could not run. That rule somehow
Yeah.
magically
yeah, that
disappeared.
rule disappeared.
It magically became the ether in the air. And I'm scratching my head going, wait a minute now. If you donate to a non-Republican, you're out, but you now can take AEA money?
Well, remember, Doc Mancuso was elected as a Democrat
Sure
in the
was.
last century.
That's correct.
In 1998
That's correct.
and
That's
then
correct.
lost in 2002 to a Republican. A
I just
generation later, for whatever reason, Lawrence County pulls him out of retirement to run against Ernie Yarborough. I'm conservative, so I'm Ernie Yarborough all the way. But it was like, so you're telling me because Doc was a Democrat before some of these voters were born, that he can't be a Republican today, even though your rule is 6 years. It's not 23 years.
I mean,
And Jesse Battles was just helping an independent, Craig Ford.
I'll be frank with you, man. And that's where, as Secretary of State, my role is not to be pro-Republican or pro-Democrat. My role is to make certain that I'm the champion, I'm the chief cheerleader for getting people to vote, protecting that vote, and protecting the integrity of counting that vote. The reality, though, is I'm starting, I guess, the evolution. And you, Brandon, I mean, you're a historian, man, and we've been at it long enough, and you know the details. You can't fight the inevitable. People want choice.
Yeah.
People, and I feel, not because of emotional feelings, but because I can see it in the data, you're going to have a strong third party coming. It's coming. Because Democrats who aren't LGBTQ progressives, they don't want to be full-fledged Republicans. And they don't have a political home. Republicans who aren't full MAGA don't have a political home right now. And I see those two coming together, platforming, and I think it's going to be it's coming. And I don't, people can throw darts at me or whatever it may be, but that's just the way the world works. You can't fight dinosaurs dying, and you can't fight when people want more than two
nobody's a
choices.
bigger Trump backer than me, but I mean, whether we like it or not, he exits stage left in 2.5 years.
And policy-wise, less than that.
Yeah. I mean, there's already a big division within the party between
100%.
the George W. Bush, Lindsey Graham, hey, we want to be able to tell these other countries what they can do and what they can't do. And if they don't do it the way we want to do it, we're going to come and we're going to send force and we're going to bomb them into whatever. And then there's like the Tucker Carlson Republicans that, oh, hey, we just want to stay over here and just hang out and be America first. I think most people are somewhere in between those two poles, but those two poles don't fit under the same tent.
Oh man, you're so right.
Trump, through force of his personality, has sort of put them in there together, but it's not a happy marriage.
Hey man, I'm the happy-go-lucky guy. I love this conversation because it really the bone, Chris, of this conversation is the due process of America. The due process of America doesn't have a color, it doesn't have a kind, it doesn't have a dollar figure. The due process of America is when the natural alliances start to fade and create something new. And sometimes you don't have to vote for it. It just naturally happens. Trump moving stage left. Here comes Tucker Carlson, who probably will be a presidential candidate. And he's going to have, or if he's not, he's going to have a lot to say about who is, who's pulling the party in two different America First versus America Intervention. And this Iran thing is testing the mettle of the Republican Party. Because you still have internationalists like the George Bush wing who like this side of Trump. They hate Trump. But Trump hitting that button on Iran, oh my gosh. Do you know how many dyed-in-the-wool conservative Republican business? They love that. But the America First wing, and I have to say this. Look, I own an establishment in Huntsville. We hosted Moms for Liberty who had Marjorie Taylor Greene. Beautiful place. 400 people came and about equal amount protesters outside. And she came in and she talked about this. What you just said, Brand, is there's this internal split happening. And there were two congressmen, her and Dale Strong was there. Lots of people there. It was a good time. But I had private conversation with Marjorie Taylor Greene. And we talked about the protesters. Our lives were put on the line. My life was threatened. You can look it up online. Her life was threatened. This went on for about 3 weeks last July. And it kept on going. We had to close that business because people were threatening our workers. Well, before Marjorie Taylor left, I had some really, really private time with her. And I'm like, MTG, man, it's great to meet you, great to know you, but what's going on? I had a strong feeling, guys. Last July, she was done. 3 weeks later, Charlie Kirk was assassinated. The things that she and I talked about, I'm not going to share it all, but her disgruntlement was that she had access to intelligence that I didn't have. But her anti-interventionist self, she felt used. She said, look, Chris, we're at the grassroots. We're having these events. We're the ones that are getting protested. Our families are getting protested. Our kids, we're the ones who are getting the death threats every day. And she was right. And I was like, yeah. She says, we're the ones got to have 100 police officers. And 3 weeks later, Charlie Kirk was dead. I closed my establishment. A month and a half later, she quits. I say that to say to you that the soul of America and her quitting may have to do with many different things. But I know what she said to me about, is it worth it to put your life on the line if it's going to lead to America not being America first?
Mm.
And today I still think about what she said because she's at the house. I still think about it because of what's going on in Iran, which 45 years later, we should have taken care of that a long time ago. We have to do it now. But a month from now, if gas is $5, affordability becomes even harder.
I had this conversation with a one of the Republican women friends of mine, and I told her,
I'm going to call coming. I'll be right back.
you're gonna be what you're gonna be what now?
I said, I'll be right back. I got a phone call coming in.
Okay. I told her, yeah, I think if this Iran thing goes our way, we'll be in good shape.
Yep.
But now, if we're still fighting in Iran and there's U.S. troops on the ground over there, is somewhere in Iran doing whatever, and gas prices are $3.85 a gallon, I don't like our chances in this midterm at all. I think we will get crucified.
And I think you're not only that, the Strait of Hormuz is so valuable because that little canal is where 90% of Iran's oil shipments go through. Trump today is asking for allies. He wants support from allies. He didn't go to NATO and ask, but he wanted support for allies. So this just is not about America and Israel. The reality, though, is if we cannot, and I believe in America, and I believe in the mission, if we are still stagnant, like you just said, it doesn't matter whether or not the mission is just or right. 45 years, we don't need them having a nuclear bomb. Get that part.
Yeah.
But it's not about what the truth is. It's about the perception. And when you're looking at the gas pump and you're looking at the price of food, the perception becomes, is this financial sacrifice that we're making worth it? And as you said, boots on the ground. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose. You're going to lose in the midterm if this progresses 6 months from now.
Yeah, I talked with another Republican lady at that same meeting Saturday, and her grandson is a captain in the Marines that just got sent. They were hanging out in Japan. They were put on a boat and said, "You're going to the Middle East." Hopefully, they just ride around out there. But you generally don't call them the Marines unless you're going to use the Marines.
And
I bet they're
listen,
landing on
I know
Clark
some Gold
Island,
Star
but
moms out there. There are some people like you just said who I know personally who have, I'm not going to say where, but their children are at risk, and they're Republican.
yeah,
And I'm gauging and put my ear to them a little bit to get a feel because they've got skin in the game per se, because it's their child. And the young man lost his life who was on the refueling plane from Auburn. I think the young man was from
yeah,
Auburn. That hit close to home.
yeah.
So now it's not about politics or policy. It becomes more about life and death. And because we're fighting laser wars, we're fighting drone wars, we don't have to have a whole lot of troops to execute and complete this mission.
But we still have 50, there's 50,000 U.S.
50,000.
troops are in the Middle East and
They're there.
2,500 Marines are on the way.
And what you're saying is very competent because it's not about you and I getting into a hand-to-hand combat or we're drawing guns on each other. Those type of wars are over. We're in a new thing. They're doing a new thing now. The proxy war. Iran didn't strike an ICBM and hit a button to hit America or hit Israel. They hit the closest troops that they could find. They hit a hotel. They're going to kill soldiers wherever they are, even if they're in Jordan or somewhere else. And that's what makes this war very, very different. And this is a situation where I trust the president. I want to give him the leeway that he needs politically and conversationally to complete what he's. But now he's asking for allies. So that's a tail signal. That's
He's
like
asking for allies because we don't have the Navy that we should have and the Navy we used to have. We don't have enough destroyers and surface combat ships to escort, tankers through
That's
the
right.
Strait of Hormuz, like we need to be doing it. There really needs to be a one-to-one, one destroyer to one tanker, and them moving a convoy where it's
When you're
like
looking
three
at
ships escorting three ships. And you can't do that with a 280 ship Navy, and 60 of them are submarines, so they don't count that way. And some of them are troop ships, and some of them are supply ships. The old Reagan Navy where we had like 580 ships, we could do that. Or we
it's
did do
interesting
that.
because you're absolutely 100% correct. God bless Mobile, Alabama, because I believe if we do an audit of what just happened, all the things that you said are true. We need to be doing some shipbuilding.
Yeah, big time.
And this reflects the good point that you made of understanding as Secretary of State, I want to bring those businesses that are focused on our war efforts. What we do in Huntsville, we've got billions of dollars of contractors here in Huntsville, but none of them do ships. We've got some Navy contracts, but you have to build ships.
That did just change.
It changed. I mean,
Yeah,
Mobile,
I think Adrian, I've never heard of it, but they just launched one of like the biggest defense plants has been built in this country in like 20 years. And, their deal is to build ships for the Navy. I don't understand exactly what they're building, but
how about the Coast Guard coming to Birmingham, Fairfield, Alabama,
yeah,
as a training center? And there's a big spot over there in close to Russellville. I mean, close to Florence. Mobile is about the state of Alabama. Once they audit what we just did, we have to do some shipbuilding.
yeah.
And so I see a resurgence of the economic impact, no matter if it's a Democrat or Republican president.
Yeah.
Alabama wins.
Whatever happens with Iran,
Yes.
this is exposed. We don't have enough naval vessels. And if we mess with China or China messes with us, Yeah, we need like 200 more ships than we have now.
100%. And I mean, I deeply believe the good news of this, and this is something, you know, it, I like basketball. Michigan's in basketball. I like watching Bama basketball, Auburn basketball. And sometimes when you're losing games, you got to play a guy whom is at the end of the bench. And maybe he's not good enough yet, but you got to put him in the game because your starter goes down. You're not as deep as you used to be. So the law of unintended consequences kicks in because you put the guy in, and you're the coach going, gosh, this guy's going to hurt me. I don't want to play this kid. He ain't ready yet. But he goes in and you find out that, hey, wait, it's been since the beginning of the year. He's been down there. He's been practicing. He's in the game. He's a good ball player. And you can use this player and you're like, wow, okay. He earned his scholarship. He's a good ball player. And I can change my strategy and tactics and bring him into the mix. This is what happens with Iran. The law of unintended consequences is going to kick in where we need 200 more ships. We need some more. We got to build some more missiles. We don't have enough ammunition. Okay. We're going to have to double our efforts to be able to recruit more people to the military. And that's what I see. And it works for Alabama because of what's going to be happening with the folks who build airplanes down south, what's going to happen who build ships, what's going to happen with our Navy. I think Alabama is going to be a big beneficiary. It doesn't even matter who becomes over Congress, Republicans or Democrats or president. We have to protect this country. That's job number one. And I think there are enough Democrats who understand that. And I think it's going to benefit the state of Alabama.
Well, Chris, we've had you on for over an hour and a half.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
Appreciate it, man.
Is there anything you want
I can handle it, man. This is my element. I mean, to be on with you guys at the grassroots level, man, I wish that anything I can do to bring you to my team, I'm going to do that. But it's not about me, man. It's about all of us. It's about these conversations, about the people who are behind the scenes for years. You know, my hope and goal is that pulls a lot of people. I don't have political enemies, man. I love the art of the process of what we go through. It's like I told Wes Allen, Wes, you're not going to want to be Secretary of State 4 years from now. You're going to want to be the lieutenant governor. Oh, no, Chris, I'm Secretary of State. I'm going to be that guy. Blah. I said, now you won't. And what happened? Even Caroline Dobson. I like Caroline. She's not speaking to me now because we run against each other. But Caroline, I introduced her to North Alabama. I was one of the first people who wanted her to run the Senate. So I don't have anything, negative to say about Caroline. What I do know is, I know me and I know you guys. You have to have a passion for this that goes beyond pick me. This is not a prom contest. If I win or lose, it's not. I thought she did a great job running for Congress. And I know that the Supreme Court is going to come back and they're going to allow the redistricting of these congressional seats. I didn't run last time. Against the general in Congressional District 7 because they changed the lines. And I saw the writing on the wall at right at the end of the primary.
Yeah, they rewrote that line so Terry Sewell could be in there no matter what.
Man, what? I mean, it's like waking up Christmas Day. They redrew the line. Matter of fact, I called you. I said, did you just see what happened? He said, I saw it. I'm like, bro, I'm not going to. What am I doing? Spending money to do what? No. So now the Supreme Court, between now and June 20th, they're going to make a decision that you cannot use race as your primary reflector of your lines. It's going to happen. The Republican Party has already sent a bill through the House, and they're about to sign it, led by Garland Gudger, that's going to cancel this election if, in fact, and it will, the Supreme Court comes back and allows the state government to change the lines. They're going to go back to what the lines used to be, or their last effort. Congressional District 2 is going to go away. It's not going to go away from the standpoint that it leaves, but it's going to be a
There'll be a
60-40
two, but it will look
Republican.
like Barry Moore's District 2 rather
That's
than
it.
Shamari Figures District 2.
Right. So if Barrymore loses, right, he can go back and run in his old seat from the Wiregrass. If Barrymore wins, right, Caroline Dobson, you can go right there and run for that seat and go get you a free ride to Congress. You just spent $3.8 million.
Caroline will be a good candidate in District 2.
100%.
If they redrew it like it was when Barry was there.
And that, yeah, 100%. She has already milked every vote out of that spot. And you're telling me that we as Republicans can now be 60-40? She can walk in and get her nice, beautiful suits on, and she's headed to Washington, D.C., and she'd win by 75-25. Easy.
Yeah.
Easy. Because she's already run just 2 years ago for Congressional District 2, and she's running statewide now. And I'd be the first one to donate to Caroline's campaign. Because I believe the people who run hard, have skin in the game, they've earned it. She's never won before, but she's run before. I get it. But for our congressional districts, that Congressional District 2, Shamari's gone. Is no way he's going to win that or run for that with a 60-40 split. He may even turn around and run against Terry Sewell.
Wow, that'd be interesting.
They might. I mean, talking to some of the Republicans in the House, don't be surprised if Mike Rogers moves into Jefferson County and takes a piece of Birmingham, and Robert Adderholt takes another slice in District 4. District 7, if they get what they want from the U.S. Supreme Court, yeah, I mean, Jefferson County could be split into 4 different congressional districts.
And Terry Sewell will be in trouble.
Yeah, Terry Sewell will be gone.
Yep.
It'll be another Richard Shelby back when that was
and that's what and guess what, guys? And I know you got to go. Donald Trump and the Republican Party in D.C. lost almost 5 seats in California just a month ago because they passed their local law on how they want to draw their maps. So the margin of victory in the House is razor thin.
Yeah. And there's political precedent for this. I mean, we all see Massachusetts as this great blue liberal, just wasteland.
Yeah.
They vote 40% Republican.
That's a lot of people.
40% of that state is voting for Donald Trump and whoever the Republican is running for U.S. Senate there, and they don't get a single congressional person. Not one. Those things are professionally drawn where a Democrat wins.
So I think that's the reason why Chris is Brand, he's frozen there.
Easy to draw Alabama where it's 70-30, all 7 districts.
And as I depart, I was disappointed 2 years ago. Brand, I said to you then, I said, if the Republicans do not draw a congressional map where they can win them all, they should be excluded from the party. Because if the Democrats had a chance to draw a map in Alabama, how many seats do you think they would draw that would favor the Republican Party?
Oh, yeah. They would draw like 3 of them, and there'd be like 95% Republican because they would draw them out of there so they could compete in the other 4.
Correct. And so when Black people talk about we don't have anyone to vote for who our president, who reflects us, I ran. Where I don't count, I ran for congressional district 7. You're gonna tell me you just have to vote Republican, but that's a political thing. But you can't say I don't express your values because I'm from that soil. My ancestry's from that soil. My family lives in that soil. I'm in that soil. I run for statewide office. You do have Black people stop saying you don't have an option. That's what they keep telling the Supreme Court. Oh, well, we don't have nobody to vote for. Sure, you do. Sure, you do. And that's the power of why I ran. And that's the power of making people alive. I just want people to know, vote for who you want. Vote for who you think best represents you and best represents the state of Alabama and also represents the Constitution, but also represents the power and presence of where our country is going. Not just what happens, not just the votes that happen here, like you're talking about Massachusetts. We have to be concerned about what happens across the country now. We're going to vote Republican probably for the next few cycles for sure. But if they're still in elections or doing things, and that's why John Merrill and also our current secretary, if you notice, they were paying more attention to what's going on outside of Alabama. And we should do the same as well. But we focus first on Alabama, Alabama, Alabama. But if in fact these maps and these map drawings, if we don't pay attention to that, guys, this year, I prayed hard this year, in the next 65 days or so, I think that race will be taken out of the context of these maps. We'll have new elections by August. I think 6 days after this happens, they've already said it that the governor is going to call for new elections. And by that time, the Supreme Court can come down and make the announcement this week, or they can wait till after the election. But the reality is, you got to keep your powder dry, as we say.
Yeah, a July special session is very much being talked about in Montgomery.
100%. 100%. So I'm aware of that. You're aware of that. Chris is aware of that. And I think there are no smarter guys than you guys who know what's going on. That if you're going to fundraise and you're going to run for office, you got to be careful here, because it's much more difficult to have federal dollars than it is to have state dollars. So you want to be careful on what race fits you best. And that's where you want to raise your money for, because you don't want to have to start giving people their checks back.
Yeah, and as someone who sells political advertising, it's very difficult to get people to turn loose of that money right now, because they're not
100%.
sure whether their primary is on May 19th or August the 19th.
That is 100% what's going on. I have people call me all the time. Barry Moore and those guys are calling. I tell them the same thing you just said. I said, if you're out here paper chasing, be careful, because you could be telling people a lie without intentionally. Tell them the whole truth, right? Tell them the truth that we're going to get redistricted and elections are going to, they're like, oh, just send us the money. And I keep saying to people all the time, hey man, don't jump out there too early, because this could go until August. So you could have people running for Secretary of State end up running for Congress, or vice versa. You saw the young man who worked for Tuberville. He dropped out last week from the Senate race.
He raised over $1 million running for Senate. Didn't
most of the money out of state, though,
of it, and then got out. What does that tell you?
It tells Christian Horm
there's over $1 million there in his federal fund.
There you go. So I appreciate you guys having me on, and I appreciate you allowing me to express, not just my intentions, but my truth, and also the long game of being someone who's not just in the race, but I'm just like you guys. I talk about it. It's a sport. It's a great sport. And I'm going to be buying political advertising. I mean, I'm definitely going to be doing that. And but you have to understand what's the right timing here. We're all waiting to hear from the Supreme Court. You get a guy last week who raised $1 million who said, I think I'm going to wait. Oh, Christian,
without spending any of the money.
Right.
And we
get that money back.
And we just had him on like 3 or 4 days before. We just interviewed him like 3 or 4 days before that too.
Man, that's the reason why you guys are smarter than the average bear. Next time when you talk to candidates, search their heart. Why are you doing this? Are you trying to win a race? Are you trying to win your position? The guy last week goes, "Oh, I think I'm gonna run for Congress though. I don't know which one." So he's already been told. Remember, he works for the Tuberville camp inside the camp in DC. He already knows that the Supreme Court is going to empower the state of Alabama to redraw their lines in favor of the Republic. He knows it. That's the reason why he did it. You don't raise $1 million and then say, "Oh, I'm not going to do this anymore." He knows what I know and what you guys know. It's going to happen. And he's not going to say which congressional seat that he runs. He lives in Red Mountain. What you going to do? You going to run for Terry Sewell?
He may run down there. He's got to see how it's redistricted by the legislature.
That's right. There you go.
And now in Congress, you don't have to live in the district where you run.
Well, I know I didn't live in the district where I went, right? And the vote total at the poll box, I still raced. I ran a race down in the area because I know where my votes are, because I just run for Secretary of State in 2022. 24, I run for Congressional District 7. Those people know Christian Horn. They know me because I've been campaigning. I've been campaigning since 2022. I didn't wake up in August and say I want to run for Secretary of State. And if you notice, no one who ran in the last campaign is running now except for me. Well, you know, God bless Ed Packer's soul. He can't run, but I want his votes too. And ultimately, there we talk. We know how this is going. But guys, strap in, man. Put your seatbelt on. It's going to get bumpy between now and August. For the people who make money in advertising, political advertising, I wish I was in that business right now. Because that guy who said, "I got $1 million, I'm running for something," he's going to keep his powder dry. But it's going to be more expensive for him at the end because the price and the CPM rates go up and everything else. So, I'll be ready to spend money. But when I tell people what I'm raising money for, I'm raising money for my targeted political advertising, not for all this other stuff.
So we've got one competitive congressional race down in one where Barry is not running again right now. We could easily have 3.
Easy. Brett, that's why you guys say, what is Chris doing? Why did he jump in the race? Well, Caroline, she didn't have no one running against him because I got a call from the auditor who said he was dropping out a week before the sign-in date. I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing?" "Oh, man, I decided not to do it." "Why'd you do that now? She has nobody to run against. She's not going to get a free pass." I can't let that happen because this is Alabama. No disrespect to her. But you got to run. You don't get gifts like that. I'm going to make you earn it.
I remember Rush Limbaugh said that nobody should run unopposed.
Never. And guys, that's my core theology. My core theology is nobody, mayor, city council, dog catcher, executive community, and people in Madison County, they will tell you, I will go recruit a dog to run against you. I may love you, but we've got people up here who have no opposition, and guess what? They're voting like they have no opposition. They're voting like they have no opposition in the state legislature right now. And so people are calling, "Gosh, I see why you say that." You do that so you can always apply pressure.
Yeah.
If you're not in a situation to have leverage to apply pressure to a Secretary of State, how do we know that you're gonna do things that we want you to do? We have no idea. Because you didn't tell us anything while you were running because you didn't have to. BCA told you what to do. I love business. I'm a small business owner. But I'm telling you right now, when you see these big guys start plopping down checks, people don't write checks for no reason. They want control. They want to own you.
True.
So for me, I don't want anyone owning me. I want the people to have someone to vote for. And most often that doesn't win. But God's grace, this is fun. Because I'm telling Carolyn, I think you'd be a great Congresswoman, Carolyn Dobson. I really do. I think that's where she's going to fit, and she'll tell people a million times, "I don't care about that position." But she wouldn't have spent $3.8 million 2 years ago if she didn't care about that position. And we may have
Sure.
3 seats to come up.
That
I'm
would be
telling you
fun.
guys, there's a 90% chance that this shakeup is going to happen. And for the political advertising folks, they're about to make a lot of money. Because a lot of people who lose in May, they get a second bite at the apple, possibly somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's the reason why this guy dropped out. And I think people underestimate what he did because they don't know him. It's not about not knowing him. What it's about is if you're in the political business, as you men are, you have to look at that move and say, wait, he dropped out and he works in DC. Right now, currently for Tuberville. He knows something. And he's going to stand on that. And you'll see him again. So, saw we lost Brand. So maybe a good time to end here, Chris. I appreciate
it. Great
you so
talking
much.
to you.
And let's do it again.
Yeah, let's do that. Good luck, man.
Yes, sir.